I want them to look at me and think, yeah, there is a chance.
The stereotype is that, all Asians become doctors. My parents wanted me to become a doctor.
How can I follow up from that?
We've come from a bit of a dark place and there's a light now.
Welcome along to our discussion on Asians in football as we talk about the sport that we all know and love very much. The real question is, though, why are there not enough Asians in football at many different levels? It's a big question. There are many layers to the answer, but we will uncover some of those answers over the course of this discussion. And I am delighted to be joined by Watford ladies winger Rosie Comita, Mansfield Town defender Mal Banning. We have the assistant manager of Aldershot Town, Anwar Udin, with us, and the head of diversity and inclusion at the FA, Dal Derek. Welcome along to all of you. It's just wonderful to have you here. And we're going to have a real conversation today about something that I think we should be talking about more. So to put this into context and to put into context why we're talking about this, let me start with this. South Asians form the largest ethnic minority group in England, but they still remain one of the lowest represented in our national sport. The question is why? So Dal, I know there are many different answers to the question, but let's talk to you first because you're heading up the diversity and inclusion strategy for Asians in football. So tell us, how is it going and what does it look like at the moment?
You can look across any industry and you will find people from Pan-Asian backgrounds, whether they're East Asian, Chinese, Japanese, or whether they're South Asian, Indian, Bangladeshi, Pakistani. You will see them excelling in every single industry. But where that really is not happening as much is across sport. And you look at the population of the Asian community, it's around 7.5% across England and Wales. It's 4+ million people. But we see those numbers really dwindling across the professional game. The Asian inclusion strategy was launched in April of 2019. It covers 5 key areas. It covers the areas of work across what we do as an FA ourselves. What are our accountabilities and how do we make sure that we are representative of the Asian community? It talks about culture. A second area is around pathways, which is, what do the pathways look like? How do you get to the position that you want to get to? There's a third area around grassroots. How do we continue to ensure that people are involved in grassroots football? And what does that look like? There's a fourth area around women's football, which is celebrating role models and obviously using the Euros that are coming up in 2022 as a way of providing a legacy and providing an activation piece for women to get involved in. And of course, there's better comms and engagement. So there's lots of work to be done. I think that we have ramped up the work. I think we're spending a lot more time and focus on this particular area. And we have to change those perceptions and we have to make people feel like football is accessible to them.
For you, Mal, because I've heard you talking recently really honestly, and I really love this interview where you said, I feel like I have to give 20% extra before I've even started. And you just think, when you think about that, you think that's not right. We should all be starting on the same level playing field and then be judged accordingly. But you mentioned that extra 20%. What is that like? Tell us why you think that is.
I was at Warsaw, came through the system there about under 8s, 9s, I think, and I came all the way through. And just from a young age, my dad always used to tell me, obviously a lot's changed since then, but back then he used to tell me, you need to be that 20% better, obviously because you're Asian in football. You need to be that 20% better than anyone else, really, to kind of be noticed and kind of get that contract. So it's just a belief I've always had in me since I was young, coming through the system. And it's just something that I stuck to, and I just quite firmly believe it because I think there's not many of us in the game. So that kind of barrier of being Asian in the game is that I've had that belief, and I still kind of believe in it, is that I need to be that 20% better to get noticed or to stay in the game. And luckily enough, I've been able to do that, and hopefully I can continue to do that. So I think the more of us that can kind of get in the game and kind of get our names about, gives more beliefs to younger lads, obviously coming through or from grassroots levels. Yeah, I will get picked up by this club, or I'm in the system, so hopefully I can make it.
I remember signing for West Ham United in 1997, and I was asked, Anwar, you're the first player of British Asian to sign a Premier League contract for West Ham. Why is there such a lack of Asian representation across the game? 22 years later, I'm asked exactly the same question. The good thing now is I can refer to role models across the leagues, which is great. It's a great thing to do. And I think there'll be more to come. But it's been a long journey, a progressive journey, but we've come from a bit of a dark place, and there's a light now. The fact that you can turn on a TV and watch a British Asian playing in the Premier League, in the EFL, in parts of non-league. The fact there are people in coaching positions, there are coaches being upskilled. There's a lot happening from our community. And I feel now you've got a new generation of South Asian people in England that are hungry, have got an appetite to get in the game, and they're going to use that platform to be the best that they can be, because the game has been superb for me. It's given me everything. I've played, I've managed, I've coached, but it's been an uphill struggle. As a younger player, I remember my father never really coming to games, and that was my fault because I asked him not to, because I felt uncomfortable with how he would be treated, the terminology, the behaviours, and that I carried that with me as a young pro. And then when I was confident enough to be a player who could dictate an environment, dictate a dressing room, become a captain, things changed for me. And now being in a coaching position, I am one of the individuals that set the environment at a club. And for me, it's about setting the right environment. So regardless of who you are welcome at Aldershot Town, and we want to get the best out of you regardless.
Do we feel that there needs to be more change behind the scenes? Do we need to see more Asians behind the scenes before we see that translate onto the pitch?
Yes, we do need to see more people behind the scenes. I think it's very important that people that are coming through grassroots football or want to have a career in football at some point in the future see role models that either, they can relate to, that look like them, across the game in leadership positions. I mean, that's the kind of thing that the Football Leadership Diversity Code that the FA has rolled out in the last 6 months will do and will attempt to change. That's also happening for the Grassroots Diversity Code that's coming down the line as well. I think it's important that there are people in positions of power that have that have diversity, that reflect various protected characteristics. So yes, it's absolutely important.
We always say that role models are so important for us all, and especially for the younger generation getting into the sport. Do you feel like you have that responsibility as well, Mal?
For the younger lads looking up, I want them to look at me and think, yeah, there is a chance, there is that kind of chance of playing professional football and getting stability in the game, And I'd like to add to that for them. So, for example, if they want to reach out to me, I'd love to help them and tell them the experiences. Obviously, it's not all been good. There's been plenty of ups and downs. So it's one of those where I think I'd love to act like that. And I think some of the lads that are already in the game, the 5 or 6 of us across the leagues, would love to help the younger generation to get more Asians in football and obviously participating more in the professional game.
If I look at myself as a role model and really take that role, then I think that's going to be really helpful, more so to change the perceptions of women's football in a parent's eyes as well. I think that's going to be important, and it will help the conversation for these younger girls to have with their parents. If the parents are seeing that, there's young Asian successful women in refereeing positions, coaching, playing, whatever that may be, in media, for example, then that really helps the conversation. And I think that's important too.
For me, I've always looked at it with a positive mindset. What an incentive to become one of the first of anything in life. You're going to have a legacy, you're going to make a mark in history. Loads of players over the last 5 or 6 years have taken on that responsibility of being a positive role model. It's about giving everyone a fair chance, an equal shot to flourish in your environment. And that's another thing. You have to create that environment for someone to step into and become the player that they hopefully potentially can be.
It starts really young, doesn't it? If you really want to make it, I'm not just saying Premier League, as Anwar said, Championship level, League One, League Two, your football career has to start at a young age, does it not?
Typically, if you look at the careers of someone like Jan Dander, for example, who's playing in the Championship, he went through, and Mal as well, went through academies very early on. I think it's really important that parents and people from those backgrounds understand the journey and the process you need to go through. I think, as we've already said, it's not easy. It's definitely not easy to become a player or anything else for that matter. So yes, the earlier that people can play, for example, if you aspire to be a footballer, is identify the talent, get our children into playing the game, and naturally, the more people that go through the funnel will come out. More of those will come out the other side. Yes, there probably is something systemic around looking at the scouting system, around looking at the way that academies are structured, and do they represent the communities that they operate in. For example, any kind of professional club that operates within an hour of its locality in terms of, or 90 minutes of the radius around it in terms of where the academy players come from. If you were to do some comparisons of the diversity of those regions in comparison to the diversity of the academy itself and the number of players that come through, you might see some, anomalies. You might see that it's not as diverse as it could be. The shop front of football is, of course, the people on the pitch, the players, the coaches that people see on TV screens or see at pitch side when they're out at games. But football is more than that. It's an industry of people that are made up of HR professionals, finance. It's important to acknowledge that actually you can be a lawyer and become a football lawyer. You could be a physio or a doctor, you can be a doctor and work in football. You can be a physio. Robin Chakravarti was the England senior men's doctor in terms of the Lionesses. There's Dr. Zaf Iqbal. There's people that exist in football that don't just play or coach or referee. You can work behind the scenes and work in the legal side or the technical side or the analytical side. All of these things are equally as important. And it comes back to your question around behind the scenes and structures. We need to see people working at all levels of the game in management. The chairman of Arsenal, for example, comes from an Asian background. All of these kind of things are really important because it will show and demonstrate that you can make it in this industry. You can make a really great career out of sport. You don't have to go and do some of the traditional vocational things.
Sometimes football is just a tool that gets us there, and then you branch out, right? And that's absolutely fine. And I think the more times people see this happen, I think that perception is going to slowly change, which would be great for everyone.
We're seeing a lot more focus on no room for racism in our sport. The Premier League have been pushing that hugely, as have the FA. And we've seen the Black Lives Matter campaign. We're talking about these important subjects right here, right now. So do you think, Anwar, as an Asian community, we need to be a bit more vocal as well?
I don't think we've done that enough over the last 3 decades, if I'm honest. And I'm very honest, because I think you have to be if you want change. But I think now is the time, because we have role models. Wherever you are in the country, there's probably a young British Asian or an old British Asian player, for that matter, playing at a club near you. Go and watch him. Go and support him. If he scores, if he's made his 100th appearance, if she's made her 100th appearance, if she's been made as the skipper of the club, retweet it, like it. We need to, because if we don't support each other, are we getting the support from everyone else? That's the discussion that's been discussed for over 30 years. So I think we have to make sure that we support each other first and foremost.
We all know social media is a big thing in nowadays world. So it's just kind of creating that page, like retweeting or kind of profiling it. Obviously, I was very bad at that as a young age, because I didn't really brand myself as a professional footballer until I kind of knew that, I'm established in the game. So it's one of those kind of creating awareness, really. Obviously, social media we can use, and just creating more calls like this, getting to know one another a bit more. Obviously, like, I know you hear, oh, this lad's big time, he doesn't want to get to know you, blah, blah, blah. But there's not many of us, so there's no point kind of branding yourself, oh, I'm this big time Charlie kind of thing. You know what I mean? So it's one of those where just get to know each other a bit more. Obviously, I spoke to Danny Bath a couple of times. He plays in Championship. Obviously, I've come across Yan Dan. I haven't really spoken to him, to be fair, but I've come across him in a couple of games. So it's just kind of getting to know each other a bit more, and hopefully we can do that by networking and obviously just creating calls like this and just discussing stuff, really.
What I would also say is that the people out there that are less engaging with this whole debate around Asians in football, I would love for you to get involved, especially some of the ex-pro players, some of the pro players, the coaches, the referees, people that perhaps exist that even we're not familiar with. The key to all of this is that we continue to have dialogue and we have debate, because if I'm climbing the ladder, I should be dropping the ladder down and allowing all of those to follow me and give them the first rung on the ladder. If I'm pulling the ladder up behind me, then I'm not doing my job properly, and actually I'm doing a disservice to my own community. We need to leave this game in a better place than we found it. Football is much bigger than all of us. We're all going to exit the game at some point, and we need to leave it in a better place. That's what I'm trying to do in my role at the FA, is being part of the system and changing the system. And hopefully when I go at some point, then this whole Asians in football piece will be in a much better position, and I can say we've all had a part to play in that.
There's so much more to all of us than just being footballers or just being coaches or just being a presenter, and I think that's so important to highlight, because when you do strip it all back, we're all human. We all love to have conversation and interact. I think if we can continue to go in this direction, then I don't think there's anything stopping us.
We shouldn't let ethnicity get in our way. Like, I'm a non-traditional footballing person. And so I've come from other industries, where I never really thought about my own ethnicity. Like, okay, I'm a British Asian, I'm third generation, I'm very proud of where I'm from, I'm very proud of my heritage, I'm from the Black Country, very proud about that, But when I'm in a work environment, I want to be the best person for the job. I want people to respect me for the work that I do, not because I'm a turban wearer, or that I've got a beard, or that I follow my religion, or whatever it is. It's none of that. It's about, I want to be the best person for the job, and I want the other person to respect me for the skills and the requisite experience that I bring. Our Asian strategy is now a year and a half in. We're halfway through our strategy. We're very proud of what we've done in year one, but we appreciate we're against the backdrop of perceived non-action for a number of years. And so I would love to hear more from individuals about what we're doing. People should be encouraged to go and read the report when it comes out, learn about all the great things that the FA have done or have enabled to happen with other bodies or other partners, and then come back and tell us what else we can do, because this is not an us and them scenario. This is the FA working for communities on the ground. This is me and all of the team that work on this piece, listening to the people on the ground and opening the doors for them. You know, that's what it is all about. So I really do want people to constructively look at what we're doing and give us more ideas about how we can make change, how we can accelerate change, because we're definitely on the trajectory, which is change. Things are getting better, things are more positive. We're seeing more role models. We've got great commentators in some of the guys that are here on this call today, telling us their perspectives, but we need to get even better. And I feel that we're in a great position to do that.
It's not easy to break into the world of football or media. In my experience, it's been a lot of hard work, and to be credible in your role, you have to work really, really hard. And I think that's a message we also need to get out there, in that we all want to aspire to be what we want to be. We aspire to become presenters or footballers or work in this amazing field, which is football. But it comes with a lot of hard work, and it also comes with sacrifice as well. But I don't know if you guys have felt the same.
It's one of those where you have to kind of, the mental pressure, obviously, it's not just whilst I'm playing football. You must get it in the media. Rosie must get it while she's playing football. And one must get it, obviously, if Old Trafford ain't winning. Obviously, it's the mental pressure as well, I personally think, in football, that the kind of sacrifices of like not going here, there and everywhere to kind of prepare yourself for a game and blah, blah, blah. People do need to know that you do need to work hard. Obviously, you can sit here and say, yeah, I'm a professional footballer. But for me, myself, I've had to work extremely hard. Contract-wise, like you said, you could be on a month's contract. This season, I'm out of contract at Mansfield. So, yeah, I've got games behind me. But unless I start performing well until the end of the season, it could be the difference between me getting a bigger contract or kind of a similar contract or a sideways move. So I think a lot of people do need to know that you do need to work hard, and there's a lot of physical and mental pressure in this field.
You'll get your friends in your ears saying, oh, come to this party or do this and do that. And it's just you fully believing and knowing who you are and knowing what you want out of your own life and saying, okay, that party or whatever you're about to do right now is not for me, because I know that I'm going in that direction. For young people, they need to understand that, if you lose people, it's probably not a bad thing either. It probably means you're going in the right direction, really, more so than anything.
There's a lot of young coaches. There'll hopefully be a lot of people watching this. And, you know, as Dal said, you have to be assertive, because some of the roles I've got, I've actually pestered people to let me come and coach, let me come and watch. You should sign me. And I've had to be bold enough to do that. If I would have stayed at home and not, wrote that text message or sent that email, I may be sitting at home now. But I'm in a privileged position where I've had a 20-year career. I've got all my coaching badges, but I've actually, spoke to people and asked for favours. And I'd encourage everyone to do that. I'm challenging people to be bold and brave and be assertive, because if I hadn't been, I don't know where I would be. And sometimes it can be difficult for the South Asian community, because if you look at the numbers of coaches and managers and players, you think, oh, is this really for me? Am I good enough? Will it be okay? What will it be like? All those questions start to come up in your head. Forget them. Ask the question, can I watch a session? Can I come to a game, Mal? Can you get me a ticket? I'd love to watch what it's like at a League Two game. Now, how do I get my coaching badges? That's what we need to do, because there's people in positions now that can really set you in the right direction and help with that pathway.
There's this real horrible thing called imposter syndrome, which is you as somebody from an underrepresented group, or a female, or someone with a disability, or whatever it is, whatever makes you who you are, you suddenly question yourself about whether you're good enough. So you ask yourself, well, okay, I'm the only brown person in the room. Does that mean, should I be here? I'm not sure I should be here. Or I've had many, conversations with myself where I've been the only Asian in the room. I've been the only turban Sikh in the room. And, my outward religious identity, for example, makes me different by default. And I've asked myself, I'm not quite sure why I'm here. And I think, many people from underrepresented groups feel that imposter syndrome. And it's something that we need to, get over and almost believe in ourselves in terms of where we're going. And you're right, Anwar, ask people for help. We've got to make sure that we're setting the right example, and that we are teaching the next generation about what they can do differently.
Thank you so much for participating today. I've just loved your honesty and your transparency. And let's just hope we can continue to inspire more Asians to get involved in football at all levels.